represent our township. All board members are available by electronic mail if you would like to send your thoughts to us. It is our responsibility to share such correspondence so that we are all aware of the public's concern. This is an initial budget presentation. Nothing is to be decided tonight. We need to hear feedback from the community regarding our budget and the community support we're going to cap and for consideration of utilizing bank cap. Please, in order that everybody has the opportunity to vocalize their thoughts and ask questions, please keep your comments brief. Please keep your comments as brief as possible. There are many voices to be heard tonight, and we would like to hear from as many of you as possible. I request that you keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes if possible. And please note that once you have spoken, I will not recognize you again to speak until everybody in the audience has had the opportunity to do so. I will answer the questions that I could, and I will certainly direct the questions to the appropriate administrator, and I thank you again for coming. I would like to introduce our, Pledge of Allegiance. Our superintendent, to start the presentation.
Mr. Campbell. Here. Mr. Powell. Here. Mr. Pugh. Present. Mrs. Salwin. Mr. Simeone. Here. Mr. Weinstein. Here. Mrs. Zajac. Here. Mrs. Goldenberg. Here. Mr. Bishop.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully projected, everyone can hear me here. First of all, welcome. This is an opportunity, first of all, to introduce myself. I've met a lot of you, but I could probably guess that most of you I have not met. My name is Tim Ream. I'm the interim superintendent here in Moorestown. I have just completed a 36-year career in New York. You can tell by the accent, I'm sure. And hopefully starting a second career in the state now that I live in. And I certainly have been very impressed with this school district over the last month. I started here February 4th. Feels like I've been here a lot longer than 1 month. And, certainly, this has, when I invited 4,000 people last week, I didn't know you'd all show up, so I appreciate you being here tonight. I felt, and the board has felt, this is so important. You know, there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of rumors out there, there's a lot of misconception, and so we're here tonight to hopefully give you as much information as you need. and then to follow that up with subsequent meetings so that when the time for the board to approve a vote, it's something that you understand and that the information has been given to you. First of all, I'd like to say that we're all here tonight for one reason, because we care about the children in Moorestown. There's no constituency here tonight that is not here because of them. And I see that they're represented here tonight, and that's a good thing. What I have also witnessed over the past month is kind of a contradictory to the team concept. And I always work in an environment where the team can get more done than the individual. We're here tonight, parents are here tonight, community, staff members, board members, administrators. You're all here because you care about education. So I will plead with you and ask you to collectively, all of us together, working together, can see this thing through. And sitting back and looking at the situation we have here now, it exists. How we got here right now, we should not debate tonight. But really what we need to do is come together and understand where we are and where we're going. Because Johnny in first grade doesn't really care, where we got and how we got here and who's blaming who and pointing fingers at who. That doesn't mean anything to Johnny. It also doesn't mean anything to the high school students who are here today, who need and deserve the best quality education they can get. So I'm hoping tonight that the input from you is respectful, and it's also information that this board can hear and use as input as to how this budget process will proceed. I would respectfully ask, and you'll never see a disrespectful comment coming from my mouth, I would ask that you please, when you make your comments, think about how your input is going to weigh on their minds. And that's basically all we ask for. And I hope that by the end of tonight, we have as much input that we can possibly get from you, all constituencies, so that we can move forward on this budget. The first part of the presentation tonight, I'm just going to give you a snapshot of our schools. You all understand our schools, you know what they are, you know what they're about. They produce the finest students in the country. And the second part of the presentation, Ms. Sugars will come up and talk to you about the actual budget numbers and where we stand at this point. I will go through this very quickly. And over our meetings of the last 3 weeks or so, our administrators have done an incredible job of meeting with the committees of the board to explain to them how our buildings run, where the impact of possible cuts could land, and they have a very good idea of where that lies. So I will move through this very quickly, and then eventually get to the shooting. Just a snapshot of our elementary program here. Obviously, we have 3 phenomenal schools with great leadership, great staffs, and certainly this is the foundation of our educational program. We have our core program here, reading, writing, math, social studies, and science. We expose the children in the elementary to health and PE, art, music, theater, dance, library, media, guidance, computers, the challenge enrichment, and world language. Those are all the exposures that our children in the elementary are experiencing. We also, you'll see the last column is very common in all the buildings. We have English as a second language services in our buildings, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, basic skills, which is basically your math and English support, guidance services, library media services, and our child study team services, as well as our multiple disability programs. That's a snapshot of all three buildings. I've been in all three buildings. They have done a phenomenal job with the children. I am extremely impressed with what's going on down there. Moving on to the other elementary school, same core, only we offer enriched and accelerated to the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade population. Our exposures are the same. We start to branch out in our fine and performing arts with our unified music program, our orchestra, band, chorus, enriched chorus, and our dance program. World language starts to take a specific path here, with all of our students taking Spanish, and those students who elect to take French 5 and 6 in 5th and 6th grade. Our challenge program, again, continues through our upper elementary school. And of course, our computer and technology program. Again, the services in the last column, same services offered to every child K-12 in the district. Our upper elementary school snapshot of these are the students who are included in our extracurricular programs. The musical, I want to say about 150 students are involved in our musical. Math Counts is a very popular activity at UES and of various other school clubs. Moving on to the middle school. As you know, our middle school follows the middle school philosophy that was established here some time ago. We have our core program where we start to branch out into honors on level and our English support for those students who need it. On math, we are on level, enriched, accelerated, and honors. Science and social studies make up the rest of our core program. Our exposure, again, is all of the exposures in the upper elementary world, only now we're starting to offer more of a kind of an enriched program in our cycle program. Our services, again, are available for all students in middle school. This slide talks a little bit about that middle level philosophy unique to this age level. During this collaboration or team time, your teachers have an opportunity to address common core alignment, cross-curricular approach, etc. All of these things that are discussed during team time by the team of teachers in the grade levels of 7 and 8. A lot of the important work is done in data-driven instruction. Obviously, this is something that is extremely important to our staff and to our students. That we design our curriculum and educational program from the assessments and the results that we get from the students. At the middle school, we also have 18 middle school interscholastic sports for our students, and I believe there's about 450 students who are involved in our sports program at WAMS. WAMS musical, again, an outstanding turnout of over 100 students. Math Counts, L'Oreal Science Fair, Oasis, and 16 other after-school clubs. Moving to the high school, obviously we have high expectations from our school district. We offer 246 courses serving 1,357 students with 118 subject certified teachers. 22 AP programs, 63 support classes for our children with special needs, and 33 resource room classes where they have direct instruction by our special ed staff. In athletics, we have 717 students participating in 23 sanctioned programs. Arts and activities, we have an outstanding theater program here. We have 2 major theater productions, 8 concerts, and 20 activities that are performance-based and in addition to 32 clubs supporting our extensions of curriculum. And something that Mr. Seibel is very proud of and talks a lot about is our 128,000 hours plus of community service for our students. Continuing at the high support, our academic assistants, 12-period tutorials, teachers are available to work with students during that 12th period. That's what we do our Honor Service Society tutoring, and our social, emotional, and wellness support, featured by our guidance staff, study team, and health office. And of course, we have an extensive guidance program working with our children in their college planning and preparation. A snapshot of our special ed program. We work to return our out-of-district students to our high school in the least restrictive environment. That's our multiple disability program and our behavioral disability. Increased performance on standardized assessments, that's our challenge. Hopefully these children with special needs continue to grow and produce on their standardized assessments. We're accessing higher order curriculum. There should be no limit to where these children are going, and there is very good evidence that we are accomplishing that. Participation in our structured learning experience. These are our children who go out into the communities and are experiencing these kinds of things in the community where there are so many wonderful things happening. This is probably the most positive news that's up here. Because of that snapshot I gave you, K-12, and the end product of where we are. First of all, our academic performance in the elementary is very high when compared to all schools across the state, and very high when compared to peers. As you can see, in the 3 different schools that our students are scoring very high percentages in being proficient and above. Those are outstanding scores. Targets met? Yes, across the board. Outstanding job by our elementary school. Next is our UES. Again, targets are met, proficient and above. It's compared to schools across the state, and our schools are peer schools. There is no doubt that we are at the top of the list. At WAMS, again, our performance is very high across the state and compared with our peers. If you look at the performance levels in language arts and math, outstanding. Another great job by our middle school staff. And high school, again, school-wide performance. If you look at that first column, 99% above in language arts, 96 efficiency and above in math. Percent of targets met, 100%. So K-12, we have met every target that has been challenged to us. So at this point in time, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Sugars. I thank you for the opportunity to give you a very brief snapshot of our district, and I will hand it over to her. Before you start, could I ask the folks who are in the exit doors, or some of you to possibly come into the building, because we're blocking the egress from the room. Thank you.
There are 3 seats in the front row, if anyone would like to sit.
have a seat next to you. Maybe we can identify those seats.
Let's talk about budget. Let's talk about next year's budget. Let's talk about the process, how we develop our budgets. I generally start the process sometime in October, looking at what our salaries will be, what our health benefits may be. We are in the process of getting our audit done, and once our audit is completed, which is usually in November or December, we have an idea of what kind of fund balance we have to use and can use in the next year's budget. We look at all of our operational expenses. We make decisions about maybe are there capital items that we would like to do? Are there technology items that we need to invest in? These are all things that we start talking about in October. Schools and departments start to put their budgets together. That process is from November to December. And then finally in January, we start to have an idea of where we stand, where we think we're going. So this year, putting this year's budget together, we quickly learned that we had two challenges. One was a revenue challenge. Part of the issue is we use a certain amount of our fund balance, and for lack of a better description, fund balance is sort of what's left at the end of the year after you close out all of your accounts, all of your revenue accounts and your budget accounts. Last year, or this year actually, the 2013-14 budget, we used $2.5 million of fund balance to help balance that budget. We have to submit a balanced budget when we're doing it. Starting out this year, we have $406,000 to use. That's $2.1 million less available starting out the budget process right off the bat. Even if we go to our max tax levy increase, which is 2% of the prior year tax levy, it's just over $1 million. So that does not make up that $2.1 million that's less available in our revenue stream. So before we even start to look at increases in expenses, we knew that we were going to have an issue on the revenue side. When we looked on the expenditure side of the budget, we knew that at our current staffing levels, we were looking at potentially a $900,000 increase in health benefits and $1.4 million increase in salaries. We knew that we have to prepare for PARC, which is state mandated, and if you haven't heard about PARC, PARC is our Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. It's online assessments to measure achievement in the Common Core standards. So we knew that we needed to start making sure our technology was ready for those online assessments. We also knew that we wanted to continue working with our 3-year technology plan and our technology investment, and that we've had minimal investment in capital over the past 3 years, but we also just submitted some ROD grant applications to the state to do some major projects. So hopefully we'll be able to address some of our capital needs through that process. So ultimately, starting out, we knew less fund balance, so less revenues available, it increases in expenses as we have every year. And ultimately, that resulted in a $4 million deficit. So how do we address that deficit and still maintain our current level of programs and excellence? So as we're building our budget, these are some of the assumptions that we would like to present to the Board of Education. One is a 2% tax levy increase, taking our tax levy increase to the maximum. The board has only increased taxes $400,000 over the past 3 years. So we would be proposing a tax levy increase of just over $1 million for this year. A proposed activity participation fee program, or better known as pay to play, for our athletics and curricular programs. And that would be structured based on the grade level, lesser amounts of the UES and WAMs, higher amounts of the high school. It would include a family cap, would make exceptions for students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. It would be just an annual fee per participant, and we're estimating that it may result in $200,000 in fees. That would do it be a new revenue source for the Board of Education. Also, we need to maximize our other revenues, and so we need to take a hard look at our revenues this year, what they've been in the past, and what we estimate they might be in the future. One thing that the board often talks about is extraordinary aid. Now, extraordinary aid is a revenue source to the board, and we still are waiting for our extraordinary aid application for this budget year. And the reason I'm always hesitant to include it in our revenues is because it is a this fiscal year revenue for the board, but it's a next year fiscal revenue for the state. So my concern is always whether or not they will actually appropriate funds to cover that extraordinary aid. So we have not used extraordinary aid as part of our budgeting process, but it's time to consider that. How do we maximize the fund balance when we know we have 406, starting out with 406,000? How much deeper are we willing to go, knowing that you do need to have a certain amount of fund balance on hand in the event that you have unanticipated expenditures? So how much of that would we like to use? We also just got our state aid numbers, and we know that we will receive $75,000 of additional aid this year, 2 new aid categories, both aid categories in the exact same amount, $37,810. One of those aid categories is park readiness aid. It was $10 per student. And the other one was per pupil growth aid, and we're not exactly sure what that aid is about, but all of it goes into the general fund and can be used to help us balance our budget. So about 2.9, just under $3 million in general fund state aid this year.
Just real quick, a question, Ms. Sugars. Just to clarify, the $300 in the proposed pay-to-play, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that $300 the same regardless of the participant plays 3 sports or 2 sports?
Correct.
They wouldn't have to pay $300 per month.
Correct. When we look at the other side, when we look at our expenditures, last year the district changed out of the state health benefits plan and went into Aetna as a private carrier and saved close to $1 million by doing that. Aetna was the only company that also gave us a second-year rate guarantee. Now that rate guarantee is high, 16% is high, but at this point, until we have a little bit more of claims experience for them to review, they're telling us to budget at that maximum increase. So at this point, that's what we're doing. We're also looking at other options, looking again at the state health benefits program. The problem with the state health benefits program is that it runs on a calendar year and we run on a fiscal year. So while we know what the rates are for the state health benefits program are from now to December, we don't know what they'll be from January to June, which is the second half of our fiscal year. So it's very difficult to estimate what that will be and include it in a budgeting process. We're also in the 4th year of Chapter 78. Chapter 78 is state law which mandated employee contributions to health care. It was phased in over 4 years. So in other words, you did 25% the first year, 50% the 3rd year, 75% this year, 2013-14. And next year, it will be at a full phase-in of employee contributions to their health benefits. Chapter 78 is based on both income and coverage levels. So it's literally an individual calculation for every employee in the district based on what their income level is and what their contribution is. Lower price or lower paid employees have less of a contribution. Higher paid employees have a higher contribution. Salaries are based on our current salaries guide. The other assumption that we're making is that we will look for efficiencies in all of our operational areas: maintenance, transportation, utilities, insurance. All of those things are areas that we will look for maximum efficiencies. Also, if we're going to implement a pay-to-play program, then we would eliminate cuts to athletics and extracurricular because they would be offset by those participation fees. So district-wide, we looked at our operational and non-personnel expenditures first. Before we ever look at any personnel type cuts, we're going to look at operational and non-personnel items first. We reviewed our transportation, maintenance, capital, technology, and our property and liability insurance, and came up with $585,000 of proposed cuts. Some of the things that will be eliminated with those cuts is preschool busing. Preschool busing is a very expensive program for us to run because of the personnel that are involved with that. Another would be to not lease purchase a bus this year. We have been trying to do that on an even schedule. We will not do that this year. And also, one of the capital items that was eliminated is paving at the South Valley Elementary School. But again, hopefully through the broad grant process, we'll be able to address that. Next, we looked at our support areas, tuition, and classroom materials. Again, non-personnel areas that we looked at. We reviewed our current tuition, out-of-district tuition costs that we have, what students will be maintaining their programs. Will we have new students that will have a costs associated with their programs, and do we have students that will be aging out that we don't have to send out anymore. Child study team, guidance, media center, professional development, speech and OT, classroom materials, and administrative budget lines are all budget lines that we looked at. We reduced what we would purchase through lease purchase. Lease purchase is generally used to purchase technology, textbooks, things that we finance over a 5-year period. We would reduce those items as well. We came up with $786,000 in proposed cuts in those areas.
Ms. Sugars?
Yes.
Just one item within there. How much of the $786,000 supposed to be professional development cuts?
About $40,000.
And how much is the total professional development budget?
Total professional development is probably around 120.
Yes. Okay.
District-wide operational, the first personnel cut that we looked at was to outsource the nighttime custodial cleaning at the high school. It is the one area that is currently not outsourced. That would result potentially in $200,000 in cuts in that area. Then, at this point, we turned to the elementary schools and looked at personnel items within the elementary schools. Some of the cuts that we're talking about would be with paraprofessionals. One would be to eliminate the kindergarten paraprofessional positions. The second would be to restructure classroom paraprofessionals. This would not be including one-to-one paraprofessionals, but restructuring classroom paraprofessionals at the elementary level. We would restructure the challenge program. We would continue with the pull-out portion of the challenge program, but eliminate the in-classroom challenge program. We would reduce special education staff and one enrollment at the Roberts School due to declines in enrollment. And this resulted in $603,000 in proposed cuts. At the upper elementary school, we'd be looking at reductions due to declines in enrollment both in class size and within the physical education PE program. We would have a reduction at the 5th grade level that would result in larger class sizes. Our current class size policy calls for 25 students in a classroom. That would bump those levels up to 26, 27 students in a classroom. We would look at reducing 2 world language positions at the UES and provide world language exposure across the other content areas. And within the band, chorus, and art, we would continue to offer the same program, but we would start at 1 grade later. As opposed to starting in 4th grade, it would start in 5th. With honors chorus, it would start in 6th grade, and art would start in 5th grade. And this resulted in $375,000 in proposed cuts. Looking at the middle school, again, we looked at reductions that would make class sizes larger, all across classes. We would eliminate the family and consumer science program, and STEM course offerings would be reduced through the elimination of 2 positions, and that resulted in $550,000 in proposed cuts. When we looked at the high school, reduction across all content areas that would result in larger class size. It would result in the elimination also at the high school level of the family and consumer science program and restructuring of the current guidance office, and that resulted in $795,000 in proposed cuts. So if we look at a summary here of our non-personnel costs, which is about $1.3 million, the rest of the cuts would come from personnel, operational, elementary, all the way up through high school, and the total proposed cuts in combination with the changes in revenue would help us get to, again, that budget that's at a 2% tax levy increase. So I know there's been a lot of talk about banked cap, so I wanted to explain a little bit about what banked cap is and how it could be used. Banked cap is not a pot of money. It's spending authority. It permits the board to expand the tax levy cap in certain circumstances. So because, as I mentioned earlier, the board has not gone to cap the past 3 years, they have what they call banked cap, which means they could use that spending authority in this year if they chose to do that. It has to be approved by the county office, And it has to be for a specific need and amount. So you can't just say, we need some more money this year, we're going to use a bank cap. You have to have a specific need and amount in order to use it. It has to be completed by the end of the budget year and cannot be deferred or incrementally completed over a longer period of time. So it has to be something that happens in one budget year. It has to be approved by the state. It works on a 3-year cycle, so if we don't use the 2011-12 banked cap of $695,000 this year, it goes away. And districts can only use bank cap if they go to the full 2%. So they have to do that first before they can think about using any kind of bank cap. So let's talk about our timelines. By statute, our budget is due to the county office by March 20th. We're intending at this point to approve it at our March 18th board meeting, which is a regularly scheduled board meeting for us. Public hearing then needs to be held between April 24th and May 7th. We have tentatively scheduled our public hearing for April 29th. Once approved at the public hearing, then that is the final budget. Our budget no longer goes through a voting process. So that would be the timeline that we're looking at in order to complete our budget and meet all of our statutory timelines.
Thank you. So, static power. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. I think the next part of our meeting, we should continue with the board getting to ask questions about this budget and asking our administrators about what was just presented to us. I can start with one question I have, and then I'll call on you. Just indicate to me you have questions. One of the first questions I have is that with the kindergarten, getting to the elementary schools and starting at the beginning of the presentation, if we don't have paras in the room, and I understand that from curriculum, I understand that there is much more required in the presentation of material to students than what they're supposed to come up with, and it's actually on first grade level, basically what we're asking kindergartners now. And so if we didn't have paraprofessionals in the room, how would that be accomplished?
Certainly, it would make a great deal of impact on the support we have in the classroom. Perhaps Ms. Butler would like to talk about the impact of paras. We have that plan. Yes.
I was talking to the principals. Yes, the paraprofessionals in the classroom itself support all the instruction that's happening in there, and we had to come up with a plan if the paraprofessionals were not there for the following school year. Does that answer your question?
Some more fundamental questions about this, since I was talking about, at least many of us should think about. How much money are we talking about within this total line item of $680,000 are the paraprofessionals broken into?
About $184,000.
So, in just a minute, Mr. different point. So, essentially, the current budget presentation does not assume any bank cap, correct?
Correct.
So, what we have, at least personally, I'll say that what I would be looking for as we go through these is how much bank cap are we willing to spend in order to not make these cuts to the extent that the administration would not
As a follow-up to Mr. Weinstein's comment, we had asked our principals, obviously, to identify areas that could possibly be cut. If it hasn't been done so already, I recommend we ask our principals to prioritize areas that they could have back if we were to go into bank cap. So, for instance, if we were to use bank cap to restore paraprofessionals, if we go this direction, that'd be roughly a 0.2% increase. I think it's important for us to know what the principals value and in what order, so that way we can go forward as a board.
Just to quickly address that, We have, over the last few weeks, spent many, many hours with our principals in talking about the impact of all these cuts. I can tell you that there's not a cut here that would not be an impact to our educational program. And our principals did an outstanding job in doing such as that, in prioritizing all the different levels of cuts that we have here. So we have addressed that activity, and at the appropriate time, when the board directs us or guides us as to where we're going with the bank cap or any additional expenditures that we can make, we certainly have, we are very well prepared to have that prioritized too.
Are there any, Chris?
Thank you, Mrs. Goldberg. As Mr. Reed just said, the principals and administration were in a very difficult position to put forward reductions, which in some cases set us back to 2001. And these are things that we valued then, we have valued for 12 years, and these are things that are taking us forward, moving us forward. My hope is that we, with the community support, can maintain our academic and other programming and work together as a board, administration, staff, representative parent organizations, and work diligently over the next 6 months to prepare for our 2015-2016 school year and prepare curricularly and fiscally. So as a representative of the community and a board member, I am looking to maintain as much as we can and approach this in a systematic way in which we are all engaged in improving and enhancing our program rather than making cuts that are detrimental. So it will require, from my perspective, it will require community support because we would need to go above 2%, and we would need to know how the entire community feels about doing so.
Mrs. Zajac, Mr. Simeon.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldenberg. I have a question for Mrs. Sugars, just to, well, it's a question and a statement at the same time. When we look at this year's budget, we have an extraordinary hole. We have an almost $4 million deficit. And part of that deficit is caused by structural efficiencies in the budget. Some of it is caused by one-time efficiencies in the budget. So if we look at our ability to raise taxes every year, we have the ability to raise it 2%. And that creates $1 million of new revenue to the district. For next year, and I want to make sure I have the numbers correct, our costs, just in salaries and benefits, go up $2.5 million. So it's a very simple profit and loss statement. We're only allowed to raise $1 million in revenue, yet our costs go up $2.5 million every year. That's not sustainable. That's a structural deficit that exists in our budget that we have to address. And so to the points made by my other board members, the points made by many members of the community over various meetings, we can fix this year's problem, but we're going to have to fix that recurring problem year after year after year. And that's going to be a question of how much are we willing to ask the taxpayers to pay, how much are we asking the system to improve and become more efficient, and how are we going to find new ways to bring revenue into the system. So in many respects, I think I'm recapping what some of the other board members have said, but I think you, the community, need to understand that beyond this year's problem, we've got a problem that's not going away, and it's only going to get worse.
Thank you, Mr. Simeon. Are there any other questions regarding this budget from board members at this time?
Kathy, I have a question.
Yes, please, Mr. Panzarella.
Ms. Sugars, could you maybe explain a little further the constraints, if any, regarding the bank cap? You mentioned it can be used in certain circumstances. Could you maybe expand upon that?
guess the biggest constraint with bank tap is making sure that you have county office approval of that you are using it, as I said, for a specific purpose. So to go in to say, something like maintaining the world language program or maintaining kindergarten powers is a specific purpose. You couldn't just go in and say, we need more. I don't believe, and this is just my opinion, I don't believe it is likely that the county office would approve using the entire $2.5 million in bank cap. But I do think if they see that we are using it strategically and for a specific purpose, that they would be more willing to approve that. Again, the first year, the 2011-12 year will drop off if we don't use that this year. The other 2 years will continue. It is not likely in this budget that we will develop that. So, again, we can use it strategically, but don't think that we can use it wholesale, or if we don't use that first year, we will use it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
The pay-to-play that has been offered here in figures, the board has not yet gotten to weigh in on that, but it is a policy that we have, but we haven't looked at the numbers before. So I guess my question is, have all the principals given their suggestions on this as well?
Yes, the principals gave their opinion about what they thought.
And, well, I was going to ask, for those students who cannot quite reach the threshold of paying for things, well, is there a system in place that would allow for them to be included on these wonderful extracurriculars?
Yes, we use, as we often do, eligibility for free and reduced lunch. Also keeping in mind, sometimes there's families who aren't quite eligible for free and reduced lunch, but we know that there's a fiscal issue. And we're usually very sensitive to that, so we'd be very sensitive to that.
Thank you. Any other?
Actually,
Mrs. Sajak.
just to follow up on that, with regard to paid to participate, if we are looking in that direction, I would ask that we also engage the community in what the threshold is, and that we not make assumptions. That if the community, certainly on our extracurriculars, have very valuable programs that are great for the community as a whole, great for the individual students, and also define Moorestown. And so I think we need to know what the community is willing to pay for that programming, because as the numbers before me, I would say that those are low.
Yes, sir, Mr. Weinstein.
I'd just like to try to get a little more detail on a couple of these proposed cuts, just so we have an idea of exactly what we're looking at here and the magnitude of what's being asked. I want to get a little bit better idea of what we're going to do within the world language area in the UES. What's that going to look like? Because currently what we have is everybody having Spanish and the elective of French. What would that look like in this proposed restructuring? And I have a couple other questions after.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that, or should we get to?
It would have to be exposure. The requirements from the state go K through 8th grade. We just need to have exposure to world language. The cuts at UES would force us to have an exposure to the world language that would not exist as a curriculum.
Mrs. Butler, is this a 5-day-a-week program, or is it 2 times every 8 days?
It would be less than that.
But currently what we have?
Right now, currently 2 out of 8 days.
Thank you.
And do we have an idea of how that'll impact world languages as we go up within the curricular stream, so that if we put this to an exposure at the UES, I assume that means introduction to actual in-class world languages would not occur until they reach middle school now. So how's that going to impact our students when they get to the high school as far as where they're going to be able to go?
There has been some discussion at the middle school as well with the impact of world language at the middle school to restructure that as well. But it would impact some kids' ability.
And going into the middle school.
Could we ask another UES question, David,
Go ahead,
first?
please.
So in regards to the arts and the ways that this is being presented, that we would start orchestra in the 5th grade instead of the 4th, and band in the 6th grade instead of the 5th. The critical thinking skills that we know music brings to our students. Was there a lot of research done on other ways? How would this exactly be implemented? Is this system-wide, or is this the lessons that are given? What is the thought process and how?
It was researched. The idea was not to lose it at all, but to modify it so that we could have it start again in 5th grade. Clearly, we'd like it to be in 4th grade, but with cuts on the table, we'd have to start in 5th grade to maintain it. We would just start later in the process of the student's life versus earlier.
Thank you. How about other questions for UES or elementary before we proceed? Mrs. Sedgwick.
I just want to comment on the elementary programs. I think that I understand that all schools need to participate in these reductions. Our elementary schools are run so thinly now with staff that, and we are responsible for all students to best meet the needs of all students, and that's our regular education, our special education, and our gifted education. And I believe that the current programming that we offer is, to cut that any further, we are taking a step back. And those programs are what helps to develop our children as they move through the system. So I understand we're asking these questions that we really, I don't believe the administration really has had time to build a plan for any of this. They have presented cuts. So, but I just want to identify my concern in the elementary level that there are such few positions. To take any of those away, we are really, I feel, harming our elementary education.
Any other questions before we go to middle school questions? Mr. Pugh.
Thank you, Mrs. George. I just wanted to voice my concern for the kindergarten paraprofessionals. I think, obviously, we have a tight budget here. There's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. I don't know if other districts have experience of not using paraprofessionals in the kindergarten classroom. I'm personally not an educator. I just think it'd be difficult for 20 to 25 students to be managed at that young age, which is, in my opinion, extremely important, considering if we don't start educating them properly when they're young, we're going to have a major problem when they go into 2nd and 1st grade. I don't know if Ms. Butler knows of any other local districts that possibly don't use paraprofessionals in the classroom. I just think I'd be hard to believe that it wouldn't be a severe detriment.
It would be an impact, but with requirements of staff cuts, that's where we were to go. We are not aware of other school systems that do not. I think the numbers in kindergarten indicate that we need the parents in the classroom and to help us out with the education that happens in there. Teachers do a great job, but we also need the assistance with the people that are extra in the class.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Panzarella.
Ms. Butler, if you were given an option, would you say to put parents back into the kindergarten classrooms would be your number one priority for elementary schools?
Hypothetically, if we were going to put you on the spot, what was your answer?
Mr. Panzarello, I'll take that hit. We have spent many, many hours prioritizing. And I will tell you that when it comes to losing the paraprofessionals in the kindergarten classrooms, it's high on our priority list. But I would not want to sit here and start to give numbers of which is the top, or which is second, which is third. I'd like to say they're all 1A, 1B, 1C, and nothing's number 2. So with that, I will assure you that paraprofessionals are high on our priority list.
Thank you. Any Any other questions in the grades elementary through UES, K through 6 before we proceed with those thoughts? Okay. David, Mr. Weinstein.
Thank you for coming, David, that works. So just moving on to the middle school, there's really only one item here I think that needs some additional explanation directly. I understand the other two personally, if everybody else needs information they can, but the STEM course offering reduction, we put a lot of effort into robotics and a lot of effort into a lot of other areas within our district that I think would directly be impacted by STEM course offering reduction. So if I could just better understand what they are, how they're being proposed, and the vertical impact on those cuts, just so we can all understand exactly what we're talking about for the students who will be coming through after those cuts are made.
Both classes are hands-on science classes, one in 7th grade and one in 8th grade. They would also impact the current schedule as it stands in the middle school for those two cuts.
Could you get a little more, just so people, we understand the impact of the schedule. But
The schedule would change, it would not exist as it currently does today.
Mr. Weinstein, I know, thanks, Mrs. Butler. I have a great deal of confidence on middle school principal at this point, can probably explain this and get into more depth. Mr. Keaton? He knows I would never ask a question if I knew he didn't know the answer. He knows that.
You asked the question, how it would impact moving up. One in particular is our industrial tech that we're looking at. That would impact our industrial tech in the high school, our robotics program, our ability to expose students to different levels of architecture that we use in our programs as well. That will expose them to programs that they have in our high school. So it will definitely impact moving forward. I know we just sent out a robot in our robotics program, and that will be impacting
And could you give a little more detail, because Ms. Butler said it was a scheduling change that would go with it. If you could just give us an idea of what that actually means to the students.
Yeah. Right now with the 7th and 8th grade, the science STEM in the 7th grade is, what you said, a hands-on. There's some engineering components in that as well. So if we lose those two, what happens is our schedule is going to have to change. And if we go back to what our schedule would look like, referencing back what Ms. Sajak said, it would be more like a 2001 schedule, where we wouldn't have students exposed to multiple courses, which all of them do lead into the high school. We have exposure courses, courses that reinforce our curriculum in science and math and language arts. And they not only expose them to current curriculum, but they expose them to curriculums that they'll see as they move forward, which will impact the choices that they make when they get to the high school.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's go to the high school then. Questions from the high school, Mr. Weinstein?
Keep going. So in the high school, we have, I don't really know the reductions across the country. I don't know exactly what those are, but I'm sure you can give us a little more detail. I want to start with the restructuring of the guidance office. What's that proposal going to look like to our students if that structure should change?
The structure should change. There will be an increase of the number of students per caseload from approximately 200 students per counselor.
Can everybody hear Mr. Simon? Simon, could you grab one?
Sorry, Drew.
The difference would be going from approximately 200 students per caseload up to 280 or more students per caseload.
Not you threw that zero out there. Can I just get an idea of the reductions across the continent? Can you just give us a little bit of a picture of what that actually entails?
It would entail up to 2.5 staff members per content area across the core and electives as a whole, which means class sizes would increase to the neighborhood of 27 or more per class.
How much are they currently?
They're all below. They're, for a large part, with the exception of Specialty areas such as music, they are typically below 24. Electives would be sort of one category, and then each of the core content areas would be the other category.
Which would increase to 27.
All the areas would increase. All areas.
The exception of English.
English, we'd be looking at a number around 24 to 25. And we still would have some limitations in some of our electives due to lab constraints.
Would Mrs. Sugars, the pay-to-play amounts that were given and estimated, would that allow us to continue with the extracurriculars that are offered at this time in which schools? All Rams, UES, high school?
The intention would be that if a pay-to-participate program is implemented, that there would be cuts at this time in the extracurricular or athletics areas. And we would continue to offer the programs that we currently offer at UES, the middle school, and high school.
And just one additional question, Ms. Sugars, for the potential outsourcing of custodians at the high school, how do we come to that number? Was that from our current company? Was that just a ballpark? Was there a
It's
bid?
really a ballpark at this point. We haven't gone out to bid at this point, so we don't know exactly what those numbers would be. We think that's a conservative estimate.
Thank you.
How about other questions from the board? We're ready? Mr. Weinstein?
Just so, it might be helpful just later, if we can get the numbers that are attached to each of these broken out a little bit for the board. It's a little bit easier for us to digest how many, it's nice to see the plug number, the broken out number, really helpful for all of us.
Yeah, I'd like to see that distributed to the public as well.
You can see why they shouldn't see it.
There are no other immediate, yes, Mrs. Seja.
So for next Tuesday evening, the budget that we would which we would be voting on would be the budget to go forth, and then there would be
It's
It's 2
2 weeks.
Tuesdays.
It's 2 weeks.
Okay, 2 Tuesdays from now. That budget we are voting on, and that's a budget that goes to the county to start. We then continue our process, and then we have another meeting with the public on or about April 29th.
We're required to have two-step budget submission process. The first is that you submit an initial budget prior to March 20th, and then you're required to have a public hearing between April 24th and May 2nd. So those are the two requirements that you have to have. Very hard to hear. I'm sorry. You certainly could have additional. You certainly could have additional meetings in that time span should you choose to do so.
Thank you.
Ms. Sugars, if I might, from the time that we approve the initial budget on the 18th, and we have to make the final approval on the 29th, are we allowed to make any and all changes that we deem appropriate?
You can certainly make changes. I would not suggest that you make changes that would require county approval. For instance, if you decided on March 18th to submit a budget that wasn't using bank cap, you couldn't turn around on April 29th and use bank cap because you still have to go through an approval process with the county office. But certainly you could, I think in that time frame, you could make minor changes to the budget. You could talk about cuts if you traded cuts or things of that nature. Ultimately, what the board is voting on is the tax levy that supports the budget.
Right.
So, ultimately, that's the number that you have to come to consensus on.
But when you say we can't make major changes around bank cap, that just means we can't submit that revised budget that one time to the county. We could end up submitting multiple budgets to the county?
Well, I would just caution that if you, let's say, for instance, that when you submitted on March 18th, you were going to use $300,000 in bank cap.
Right.
And then on April 29th, you decide you're going to use $700,000 in bank cap. you still have to have some county approval process in that time frame. So I would caution that if you were making decisions like that you would want to do that sooner in the process to make sure you had county support for that.
I guess what I'm trying to account for in the process is if we get a groundswell support for certain items later versus earlier in the process, we have the ability to put them back in the budget.
You could put them back in the budget and make cuts elsewhere. That would be, a simpler process. But if you decided that you wanted to use bank cap, additional bank cap, then I would caution you to do that sooner rather than later, so that you could have the county piece of that approval process.
So the argument that you would make is we put as much bank cap appropriation into the initial submission to give us maximum flexibility for decisions we have to make later.
If you think, yes, if the board thinks that there's still going to be questions about what bank cap would be used for, then I would recommend that you go higher and pare back, then go lower and add additional to it.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify for myself, if bank cap is to be utilized, it cannot be for staff positions, although you just said it could be for continuing a program. But I thought it was a one-year expenditure versus year after year after year.
Well, what I think they don't want to see is that you embark on a 5-year plan to implement a new program. Like if you had a 5-year plan to implement a new STEM program or something like that, they don't want to see you do something incrementally over time. They
But
want you.
existing might be a different story.
Correct.
Any other questions before we go to the public? Thank you. If we could, if you'll allow me to point, if you'll raise your hand and we get you to please come forward, and then as opposed to all standing in a line on both sides where people cannot see, I'll bring 3 or 4 at a time down and we will start. You, Carrie, and we'll get as many of you as we can. If we can please be respectful and quiet while those people are speaking, it would be much appreciated. I think that's enough at the mic at one time. I'm sorry. There are 3? I beg your pardon. Are there more that want to come to this group? Yeah. Thank you. Please. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Jin. I am a freshman at the Moorestown High School. I live at 14 Shepherd Drive, Moorestown, New Jersey. I'm here to request your continuing support of the Moorestown High School First Robotics team. First is a varsity sport online. We have to create a robot that can play a game, and there's a lot of education, particularly STEM education involved in robot making. We have to design and actually build a robot that works. Me personally, I think that this is a great opportunity because most people coming into this club have very little background in robotics, and by the end of this club, I have learned a lot about building robotics, marketing, and a lot of skills I just wouldn't learn anywhere else. And also, a requirement of the first competition is that the team has to give back to the community. So we are already thinking about fundraising for some local charities that we can do, specifically student-run charities in the high school, like Kennedy's Cause and Kingston Road. These are our local places that we can support. And this year we have done really well for our first year as a rookie team. We have won the All-Star Rookie Award, which is the highest award in the league.
Second, if the underlying problem is a structural problem because our number of students are going down, the fixed number of schools, because of economy and other things, so not so many family moves in with younger kids. If that's an underlying problem, could that problem maybe go away by itself as the economy improves and more families, the younger kids, could move into this town, could afford moving into this town? And if that's the case, if it's simply a cyclical thing in the economy, we will shoot ourselves in the foot if we even contemplate such drastic cuts. And as I mentioned, we're not only contemplating this year, we're contemplating cuts again next year, next year, next year. So are we shooting ourselves in the foot, destroying our school system because of a cycle in the economy, where if we kept investing in the school system, as the economy improved, we will see more families moving in with more kids, we will see a better economy of more kids in the school. And third, we heard about one budget today. I think it was cutting $4 million. I want to hear, if we took the full bank cap, all 3 years bank cap, right now, what would the budget look like? Because, as I said, what we do today is going to be remembered out in the future. So I think we need to put all cards on the table and review all options. So my question was, first, if we don't think we have done all the studies and have all the knowledge, have engaged an outside consultant agency in enlightening us of the full impact of the $4 million cut? 2, are all our problems because of structural things that may be tied to an economic cycle and will go away by itself if we don't destroy the school system? And 3, what would the budget look like if we take the full bank cap, at least as a starting point, and submit that to the township or whoever for starting the negotiation?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Roberts. I live at 121 Brookmont Drive, and so 10 years ago, we moved from Mount Laurel to Moorestown. Probably a lot of people did, specifically for the schools. We have 3 daughters who are in 3 schools in District right now. And I just want to bring up a point, since my parents talk, welcome to the neighborhood. But however, I'd like to challenge you on something that you said. I don't know how many history teachers we have here in the room tonight. I was a math and science person going through school. However, the one thing that I remember from my history, my schooling, was why do we study history? If we fail to study history, we are bound to make the mistakes we have in our past again. We're standing here tonight talking about a budget shortfall because we failed in the last 3 years to budget to cap. To whatever surplus we had over the last 3 years, for whatever reason, and now we stand at the precipice of a further erosion of the schools that I moved here for. Class sizes, 28. I do believe that the recommended class sizes range from 20 to 24 as recommended maximum class size. I've been in board meetings where we've very casually increase class sizes to where we are today. We should be looking to reduce class sizes, not increase. Speaking of history, I do recall about 3 years ago when we had the budget shortfall. One of the things we talked about was revenue from other sources, and it wasn't just pay to play. It's where else can we get the community to sponsor our schools? I've seen 0 effort on this. On administration. We brought in numerous administrators who I would say that is their job. Not to present us the problem, but to find us solutions. 3 years ago, you presented this problem. I do not see any effective solutions. Aside from reducing what's critical in our schools, that is unacceptable. I know that a lot of people want to speak, so I'll keep this short. What you presented us, I haven't heard one proposal that doesn't directly impact the students. And I challenge you, it seems like what you're proposing has the most impact. Class sizes, special education, extracurricular activities. What about creative solutions, like maybe some of the supervisors start teaching classes to reduce class sizes, not increase them? Where are those solutions that you should be bringing to us and not threatening us with class sizes increasing? Where are they? I'd like to work with you to find a solution. What we decide over the next course of 6 weeks will impact my children that I moved to this neighborhood for. So I do want to work with you, but I challenge you to do a better job than you did tonight.
Hello, I'm Nancy Matthews. I have a son, 44 East Central Avenue. I have a son in the high school and a daughter at Georgetown University as a freshman. And I would assume most people here share my desire that my children go to a good college. And I think that the cuts that are being proposed tonight are severely going to impact that. Let me start with the upper elementary school. We've talked about how great our test scores are. I don't think a language proficiency of 79% at the UES going down to 62% at WAMS is excellent. And that's not even looking at what the advanced proficient component is, which my recollection is that it also goes down. So how do we teach our kids to be better writers? The teachers have to have time to grade their papers. That's history. That's English. The larger the class sizes are, the less likely the teacher is going to be able to spend time improving those children's writing. Same thing with class discussions. Kids are expected to speak up and participate in class discussions. That's a lot harder in a class with 30 kids than with 15 or 20, and I can tell you that from my children's experience in the high school. The AP U.S. history classes have about 30 kids in them, and the level of discussion cannot compare to the AP Euro class, which has about 18 or 20 people in it. The next thing I want to comment on is the foreign language. I cannot imagine cutting the foreign language out of the upper elementary school. Most school districts start foreign language in 1st or 2nd grade. We should be embarrassed that we only start in 4th grade. And my understanding from somebody's comment is that the cuts at the WAMS may mean that some kids or many kids don't make it to level 5 and 6 of the foreign languages. That means they're going to look less competitive to colleges. They're going to be competing with kids from other school systems who are all in AP level or level 5 and 6, and they're not going to be there. Finally, I'd like to talk about the music programs. The music programs, again, are an important element for not only the children's enrichment and their education, but also getting into college. We don't all have athletes that are going to get recruited to If you cut the music in the elementary schools, our children are going to be less competitive against the other towns when it comes to performing in the All-South Jersey Chorus, the All-South Jersey Band and Orchestra, the state level. It's amazing how many people currently make it into these performance groups from Moorestown at the high school and middle school level. That's not going to happen if they don't start playing instruments until 6th grade. The previous speaker's comment about finding additional ways to bring in revenue. I'm in business myself. You can't keep cutting expenses. You have to grow revenues. There have got to be other ways to creatively bring in revenue besides just going to the cap and above the cap. All of that I'm in support of, but there have got to be other ways to bring in revenue.
This is part of our team. It's not all of it. And because of that, these are collective comments that have been done by a collaboration of a board of trustees of 12 elected adults who are taxpayers, but not all having kids in the school system. Over half of the speakers and listeners are not actually, but they do advocate for the arts in the school district. On More Arts, on our webpage, it states our mission, which is More Arts is an advocate for the arts, and we believe that the arts should be regarded as a necessity, not a luxury. That was the reason for the inception of the group, and it's basically in our legal name, which is Moorestown Arts Advocacy Council. Therefore, we're here to advocate for the arts at a time when critical decisions are happening due to the financial situation in the district. The district consistently references excellence in academics, athletics, and the arts. Regrettably, the arts and the nature of the arts make it a little less measurable, and sometimes get cut into financial shortfalls. We want to note that we've talked about STEM, but there is a new push called STEAM, which adds the A in. And the reason the A is being added in is because it's believed that the arts are the piece that provide the innovation aspect, and they bring that into learning. And if anybody believes, and I do, and I'm in business, innovation is what's going to turn this country around, and that's what keeps us as a leader. And we need to keep that innovation in our schools. The arts also levels the playing field and provides equity for those students who have the learning challenges. There are unbelievable amount of local, world leaders who, if you look, they've been first excelled in the arts, and then they've gone on to do whatever it is in their leadership roles. So we need to provide that foundation for our students. We're here to advocate that the current K-12 fine and performing arts curriculum stays intact. We believe that it promotes the arts, that we're not extravagant when you look at our peer organizations, our peer schools. In many cases, we make do or create. For instance, we don't have any type of filming, but if you go to the current musical, there are kids who on their own created a video of the play to promote it. I want to take one small deviation to a personal situation. It was mentioned about the high school music teacher. She stepped into big shoes a few years ago. And if anybody recently attended the Vocal Pops concert, that concert included kids who excel in our schools to kids from an inclusion perspective. Those kids were committed, they were engaged, and they had high standard. And it was a phenomenal concert. Arts and music help level the playing field, and it's a universal language. Our district is blessed to have exceptional young teachers. I also get concerned about the fact that we don't look at the fact of what those young teachers bring to the table. There is a skills shortage right now, and just because someone is young does not mean that they don't bring a lot to the table. We have things being brought in from a technology perspective. The same teacher I happen to know has brought technology into the music program that did not have technology. These kids are using music and unbelievable ways of technology on a daily basis that we don't have in other classes. More continues to support the fine and performing arts curriculum as an enrichment for special needs. We have included a lot of the special needs teenagers and other programs. We feel that there is cultural power that comes with the arts, and that the global issues are going to come, as we talked about with the languages, through the ability to break down barriers, and that's something that arts does. We ask you to continue to fund performing arts at all curriculum levels, not reducing staff or removing classes, as they are a necessity, not a luxury, for a school district that professes excellence, equity, and engagement. Thank you.
Lane. On the heels of Georgine Brzezinski, I can't say enough about the music and the Pearl program here at we're starting the elementary school, the UES, the middle school, and the high school. We moved here in 2001. It's the same story as everyone. 4 young children, my oldest, who's now 20 in college. I went through the schools. I got a tour by the principal, and we moved here specifically for the schools. We all did. And we all know it's not an inexpensive place to live. We all budgeted. We all knew the taxes we would be paying. And we all understand that. But we're here because of the schools, because of the academic programs, And specifically, I just want to thank my dear friend, Mr. Norris, who has been so wonderful. I have 3 in the high school now, I have 1 in college, and I can't say enough about the music program. Mr. Norris, I love you, Mr. Heiser, Mrs. Burke, and now Mrs. Markowski, my daughter's a freshman in the ensemble and the Madrigals. It has been such an experience. They've excelled academically, AP classes, honors